It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.
Hello and welcome to the Raymond Sims Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Opening day has come and gone in the NBA. 3 games on Tuesday night. And I figure that now is about as good a time as any to give you a preview of the rest of the NBA season, because not everybody else has played. There's 6 teams that have played that got the game started, but it was only 1 of 82. So it's still a timely subject to preview what we should be looking for in the NBA season. So I'm glad that you're joining me today here on the Raymond Sims Show. You can tune in at Spreaker.com. You can chat with me live. You can also talk with me on Twitter at Sims Coliseum, and then also be able to follow me on Facebook at Sims Coliseum and on Tumblr at Sims Coliseum if you're into that kind of thing. I know Tumblr skews young, but aren't we all young at heart? So with this NBA preview today, instead of just going conference by conference and just going like, hey, here's what I think of the Northwest Division, here's what I think of the Southwest Division, I've decided to pick several teams that intrigued me when I was going over the NBA previews from all the smart people and the bloggers that follow these teams every day and now are now back to work following them. I've decided to highlight some teams that I find intriguing outside of the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls. Don't worry, as a Chicagoan, you will not find a shortage of Chicago Bulls talk on this show. So I can hold off on that for now. I want to show a little love to the rest of the NBA. I'm also not talking about the Cavaliers because I'm sure that has been talked to death in all the NBA preview specials. The return of LeBron, the addition of Kevin Love, and what is it going to mean for Kyrie and Dion Waiters, and so on, and David Blatt is the new coach, and so on and so on and so on. And as I said before, this is a daily show every weekday from 11 to 1 Eastern, so I'm going to get in the Cavaliers talk. I've picked these 7 teams. Actually, I got to count here on my own rundown. I have 6 teams that I found intriguing and that I wanted to talk about today. And then I'm going to have some awards and predictions for you. Just, it's fun to guess the awards, no matter what it is, whether it's in movies or in sports. So I'm going to give that a crack later on towards the end of the show. But for now, I'm going to first bring up the most championship-worthy team that I'm going to talk about today. And that team is the Golden State Warriors. Now, we've seen what happened with the Golden State Warriors last year, and you may wonder what makes me think that the Golden State Warriors are primed for a championship. Well, it's all in the paper, my friend. This team looks very good on paper. They have a lot of pros and not a lot of cons when you look at the roster from top to bottom and you think about the abilities of each individual player. I mean, it starts first and foremost with Steph Curry. I mean, he's a great distributor of the ball. He's a great three-point shooter. He's a great scorer. He knows how to score. He's an all-star through and through, and we're going to be talking about him for years to come. Then you have Klay Thompson, his running mate, the Splash Brothers, if you will, because he's so good at three-pointers. Klay Thompson may be a little one-dimensional, I'll give you that, but he's still very, very good at shooting threes and moving without the ball to get in position to hit those threes. So it's really a sight to see, and those are just the first 2 guys. Then you have scoring up front in David Lee and Andrew Bogut. And you have defense in Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green. And then you have bench depth in Sean Livingston. And even though Harrison Barnes is slated to start right now at small forward, he could end up back on the bench if Andre isn't at full health. So there's a lot to like. And the team runs really fast and has a higher pace. And that's something I enjoy with my short attention span. I love fast, at least in basketball, moving up and down the court, still pushing the ball, maybe a lot of ball movement, just moving around and shooting the outside shot. The Warriors are tailor-made for my interest in terms of a basketball team on paper. And that's the thing, is they've looked good on paper for years. Even when they had when they were under Don Nelson, even though back then they were severely limited up front, then eventually they added the likes of David Lee, and they added Andrew Bogut, and Mark Jackson was the coach, and Mark Jackson was a pretty good coach. It just didn't work out. The front office and Mark Jackson weren't seeing eye to eye, and they had to part ways there. So this team has looked good for a while, and yet we've seen what has happened to them over the years. They went down in 7 in the first round last year, and they've been making early playoff exits consistently over the past several years. So what exactly makes them, why would people consider them championship contenders? Well, just as all the advantages that I had mentioned, and you have to assume health. If everything comes together, and it's a long season, so guys are going to get hurt, but if they're not hurt for long, if they're minor injuries that can be worked through, then you have to believe that this team could be in Western Conference Finals contention. And then by extension, if they win the Western Conference Finals, then they're in the championship. That's how that works. That's how they become championship contenders. But it is really a question. That's the key question here. And that's the only reason that I personally am not saying that they're going to be in the Western Conference Finals, is because it looks good on paper, but this team has health issues. And you wonder how well they're going to hold up, especially Andrew Bogut. That's the guy that I worry about the most. I think that having that offensive dimension up front really makes a difference for a team like the Golden State Warriors. And if he's not there, then that severely limits them moving forward. And usually when you are missing a center, and there are teams in the NBA across the league that are going to have to do this, either because of injury or because they just don't have a good front court, you elect to play small ball. But in the playoffs, as you move forward in each round, the teams that you face are going to have fewer and fewer issues. And usually by the time you at least get to the semifinals, you're probably going to be facing a team that has a big man that's either strong on defense, is good at offense, or both. So you're going to need that big man, and I think that's something that has severely limited the Warriors in the past several years, is that they can only do so much before they run into a wall. That's what happened with the Clippers. They played them competitively, so they were able to push the Clippers to a 7th game. But in the end, the Clippers had something that the Warriors did not, because Andrew Bogut was hurt. Or was hurt for most of the season and was limited. But it's a new year. It's a fresh new start. There's optimism for almost everybody. You know, in the NFL, they say that everybody has a chance at the championship at the beginning of the season. Not so much in the NBA. There's certain teams you're pretty sure that they're not going to win the championship. And some you're even sure aren't going to make it to the playoffs. I actually have a couple of those teams coming up later in the show because, hey, I like piling on sometimes. But the Golden State Warriors, they are a team that can be optimistic heading into the 2014-2015 season. Now, another huge question here is their head coach, Steve Kerr. Likeable guy, knowledgeable about basketball, has served in an executive position before. But what does that mean on the bench? It's interesting that Steve Kerr, who worked under Phil Jackson, was a former executive that is now moving to the coaching position, while Phil Jackson, the man that he played under for a while, was made his hay on the bench as a coach and has now moved up to the executive position. Just thought about that right now. Thought I'd share that. Hope you find it intriguing too. But that's going to be a huge question. Now, Steve Kerr inherits a very good situation, a very enviable position for any new coach. I mean, you got Quinn Snyder in Utah. He's not working with the kind of pieces that Steve Kerr is working with in his first year as an NBA coach. So even with Steve Kerr, it's not going to be a dumpster fire here. You have a lot of talented players. You're not going to make them regress off of coaching alone. So Steve Kerr is going to do a serviceable job at least. But what wrinkle is he going to put in the Golden State offense? This is a team that has been fast-paced for years, that is able to shoot the three for a very long time, that has a good outside-in game. And they've done that for years, going back to the Don Nelson days even, when maybe they didn't have the inside game, but they were moving up and down the court. So what is Steve Kerr going to bring to the Golden State Warriors tradition? He's not going to slow them down. I mean, Steve Kerr has called enough Warriors games, and he got the job. So I'm sure that that's understood, that he's not going to come in the door on the first day, or that he didn't come in the door on the first day of training camp and say, all right, guys, you know that fast-paced offense you were doing? We're going to slow it all the way down, because that would be dumb. But there has to be a signature mark there. Something, he has to make a name for himself. He has to have his signature on this Golden State Warriors team. Otherwise, he's really just a grown man babysitter. He's just going in there, rolling out the basketballs. And we saw how well that works out for other coaches that have just rolled the balls out for the players and just let them shoot. Like, it only gets you so far. Vinny Del Negro is the famous example, the one that comes to mind the quickest, but the NBA has been around since 1946 officially. There have been a lot of coaches like that, and you don't hear much about them nowadays unless it's derisively. So that is a huge question for me, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out in Oakland. This has been an exciting team for years. I want them to continue to be exciting. I hope that they don't suffer any more heartbreak, because this could really be a good year for them, especially when you have the Spurs lording over the Western Conference. A young, fast, scrappy Warriors team could really make all of the difference in 2014-2015 in the Western Conference playoff picture, which, as we know, is very crowded. So that's my look at the Golden State Warriors. Pretty much the only team in my preview that has championship contention written all over them. I have another team that could make the playoffs and make some noise, and I'll talk about them after this. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.
Yeah.
Raymond Sims Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. UBC action coming to the Coliseum Sports Network tonight at 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's the Seattle Emeralds and the Los Angeles Osos, the first Western Conference game on the Coliseum Sports Network on the presentation of UBC on Coliseum. So be sure to check that out. That's youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet for UBC Wednesday, Seattle against Los Angeles at 10 o'clock Eastern. Just got done talking about the Brooklyn Nets. I was looking over my Twitter feed during the break, and I saw that Jimmy Butler for the Chicago Bulls will be out 2 to 4 weeks. So that's already out of the gate problematic. This is a team that, with Derrick Rose back, Derrick Rose looking very good in the preseason and in training camp, not so much at the World Cup, is looking to make a championship run, and they're going to need a second score. That's always been the big question as of recent vintage in the Derrick Rose era. You hope you got that with Pau Gasol. Jimmy Butler also has a case for it, but not for the next 2 to 4 weeks. But we'll stay in the Eastern Conference here. NBA preview special here on the Raymond Sims Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. And we'll talk about the Brooklyn Nets here now in this segment. The Brooklyn Nets have endured some turmoil. Their first-year head coach, Jason Kidd, did a okay job. There were some weird quirks, some weird stories that happened over the course of the year. You may remember the spilt drink incident against the Lakers and the failed coup that happened at the end of the season. So now Jason Kidd is not the head coach of the Nets anymore, which is interesting considering that he was a player the year before and that his jersey was retired by the Nets. And yet in the end, I'm thinking about some of the other stuff that happened to him as I'm going along. He also had that that was out in Golden State, that had the coaching controversy with Mark Jackson and his assistant. But still, Jason Kidd tried to bite off more than he could chew with management, and then he decided to bolt to Milwaukee. And I'll talk about Milwaukee at the bottom of the hour. But now Brooklyn, getting over some of that craziness, they have signed Lionel Hollins, former Grizzlies coach, 3 times over. And Lionel Hollins is probably going to be looking to implement a more traditional style of basketball in Brooklyn. And they're going to need it. They need something in Brooklyn. This team is probably one of the most expensive teams in basketball, not only because of the player contracts, but also because of just the hype around their move to Brooklyn and getting them over there from New Jersey and rebranding them. Now they have to deliver on the hype. Now they have to deliver on the brand. And they've been trying for a little while now, but now it's more than trying. Now there has to be results. And there hasn't really been much in the way of results here. You would hope that somebody like Lionel Hollins that has found success with the Grizzlies will be able to translate that over into the relatively easier Eastern Conference. And I say relatively because, of course, the Eastern Conference was the whipping boy last year of how thin it was in terms of strong talent. But this year, a lot of the teams in the East have improved, at least marginally. Maybe they're not championship contenders, but they're going to give the championship contenders, your Cleveland and your Chicago, who in my opinion are the only two, they're going to give them a run for their money. So Brooklyn is part of that second tier of teams that's going to be very competitive and very tough. And Lionel Hollins is just the guy for that. He can bring some actual defense to this team. Jason Kidd did not have much of a game plan. You could chalk that up to it being his first year and having to figure that out. But at the same time, there on offense especially, there just wasn't much going on. And Lionel Hollins comes in and he can bring actual tangible plays to this team. and bring an actual offense to this team that could help make a difference in the Eastern Conference for Brooklyn. There's a lot to. This is a team with a lot to prove. That's why they intrigued me so much. Of course, I just said Lionel Hollins, but let's just start with the players that were there already. Brook Lopez has dealt with some injury issues. I remember back when the team was in New Jersey, and he suffered his first major injury, and after that, people were starting to question, can Brook Lopez stay healthy? Can he stay healthy? He's injury prone. And there was a bit of oddness around that assumption at the time, because even though it was a major injury, but it wasn't exactly fair to say that he was injury prone, because there was only one major injury. Well, then he suffered another one last year, and that set back the Nets in terms of what they could do in the post. Couple that with Kevin Garnett's just sudden zap of talent, like his abilities in the post and just what had carried him through all of his NBA seasons in Minnesota and Boston. It just went away. Not sure where it went, and it wasn't for a lack of trying, because Kevin Garnett was still out there trying to bust his hump as best as he could, but it just wasn't coming. So now this year, Brook Lopez is back, and that could really make a huge difference in terms of what the team can do on offense and defense, because Brook Lopez is so good in the post. All over the post, to be quite honest, because he can still shoot from the high post and he can push his way through the low post. So Brook Lopez will be a valuable part. His pick and roll mate, Darren Williams, he's somebody that definitely has something to prove in 2014, 2015. He's developed the reputation of a coach killer, which is not necessarily unfounded. So if Darren Williams wants to shed that, if he cares about that label and he wants to shed it, he's going to have to work with Lionel Hollins. And I don't want to hop on that bandwagon to say that he is a coach killer. I just think that he's gone through a lot of coaches, a lot of coaching instability. Like, he's not the one that chased off Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd chased off himself. So you can't count that one. But there's other coaches that it didn't work out with. Now you have a good established coach. So this is your chance to prove that you can work well with the person who's tasked with leading you. And I'm going to give Darren the benefit of the doubt and assume that this year he's going to be able to do just that. Benefit of the doubt. It could go horribly wrong. And if Lionel Hollins is fired because the team could not perform and there's news reports or rumors that Darren Williams was not happy with what Lionel Hollins was doing, boom, I'm right on the bandwagon with you, and we can get all the pitchforks and torches out for Darren Williams and his inability to live up to his potential and work well with other coaches. But until then, I'm going to go easy on him, at least for now. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this works out for the Brooklyn Nets. They seem to be going through some ownership changes. I think Mikhail Prokhorov is I think he's restructuring the ownership. I don't know if he's trying to sell off his ownership just yet, but I understand in the climate that we are in the NBA, where there's a big TV deal coming up, and the franchise valuations, even before the TV deal, were already shooting up into the air in terms of the actual price. It's understandable that Mikhail Prokhorov would even think to sell off the team, or the minority owners in the Nets, maybe looking to sell off the team because, I mean, you look at the Clippers, who are in Los Angeles, a major market, who were being bought away from an embattled owner, a controversial owner, and they sold for $2 billion, and they don't have a history of winning much until very, very recently. You can only imagine how much the Brooklyn Nets are going for, a team that has made it to the NBA Finals in their past as the New Jersey Nets, but also have probably more importantly to business owners, a huge brand identity. That black and white and that Brooklyn, that B, that is a huge. I think that is a very huge brand in the business community, in the sports business community. I mean, people love to wear Brooklyn stuff and rep Brooklyn stuff. It's right there with Sox hats, and that's really the only thing I can think of that like sells a lot very well. Yankees hats even, or Yankees gear. Like, I think the Nets are becoming that brand. Now, they need to become that brand on the court. They could be, either the good guys wear black, or they could end up being the villains wearing black. But either way, something needs to happen. They really need to make a push here in terms of Eastern Conference contention. I think they're going to be crowded out of the Eastern Conference because, of course, Cleveland and Chicago. Now, it'll be probably Cleveland and Chicago going at it for a couple of years as well. But just at the very least, I need Brooklyn to make it hard for them, for Cleveland and for Chicago, to advance whenever they play each other. That's really the important part here, because you never know what could happen. When I make these predictions, I'm assuming health from all of the teams, for all of the teams in the league. I'm assuming that through 82 games, every player that isn't already injured coming into the season is going to be just fine. And so, based off of that, even though there's a lot of injury-prone players in the league, and Brook Lopez is one of them now that he's had another major injury, I have to assume that the Brooklyn Nets are good enough to make it very far in the Eastern Conference. So this is going to be a very pivotal year in the young history of the Brooklyn Nets, the business tailor-made Brooklyn Nets. I'm looking for a word that means that they're easy to sell to people. Whatever word that is, that's what the Brooklyn Nets are. And they're easy to sell in the marketplace, and any minority owner would be able to get a huge payday off of them. But now they need to get down to business on the court, and they have a lot of players with something to prove. So the Brooklyn Nets going to have a very important season this year. So what about that team that Jason Kidd left the Nets for? I'll talk about them after the break here. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Game 7 in the World Series is tonight between the Kansas City Royals and the San Francisco Giants. But as soon as the final pitch is thrown in Kansas City, baseball is not over. The Paramount League coming soon to the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network, streaming live at Spreaker.com. You can chat with me there. You can talk with me on Twitter at Sims Coliseum. You can hit me up on Facebook. I'll have updates about stuff that I see everywhere, and that'll be on Facebook. And then I like to reblog a lot of pictures on Sims Coliseum on Tumblr, so you can join me there. And also, you can subscribe to the Coliseum Sports Network so you're able to catch all of that awesome basketball, UBC, and Paramount League action. I also have a spring football league coming up off in late January, February. So if you like sports that aren't real, then if you want an alternative sports experience, then go ahead and subscribe to the Coliseum Sports Network on YouTube, and be sure to like whatever videos you see there. Just got done talking about two playoff-bound teams, one in the East, one in the West, the Golden State Warriors, who, if they can stay healthy, can definitely compete for a title, and the Brooklyn Nets, who, if they stay healthy, they can really prove some things to a lot of critics of some of the individual players on the staff and Lionel Hollins, their new coach, and they can also be a great agitator in the Eastern Conference for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls, two teams that are probably going to be ruling the East for at least the next few years. But now, let's get into some teams that you may not be thinking about unless you live in these markets that have something interesting about them. That interesting thing may not be playoff contention, may not be playoff aspirations, but if they happen to be if you happen to see them on League Pass or on NBA TV, you may end up being intrigued by them. I have two in the East and I have two in the West that I will talk about before I head into my awards and predictions later on in the show. But now, after just talking about the Brooklyn Nets, let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. And that is actually a much more natural connection than you would think, because Jason Kidd is the new head coach in Milwaukee after coaching in Brooklyn. Again, his jersey tighter in Brooklyn. And Brooklyn actually having his back and him wanting a whole bunch of control that he hasn't necessarily earned just yet. So now he's in Milwaukee, where he can have all of the control that he hasn't necessarily earned yet. And we'll see what he does with it. He inherits a team that is trending upward. Their starting center, Larry Sanders, is going to start off the season with a 5-game drug suspension because last year he failed he went against the anti-doping policy, aka he used marijuana. And also he was suffered a couple of injuries. One was to his leg, and then another time he got hit in the face. So Larry Sanders was out due to injury and knuckleheadedness, and now he is going to be back very soon. And because Larry Sanders was out, that meant a lot in terms of the defense that Milwaukee played. That is to say, they played none. They gave up a lot of points, and it showed up in their record. So now they have Larry Sanders back, essentially, and they have Jabari Parker, the top pick in the draft, and they also have Giannis Antetokounmpo. His name has become easier to say now, but when he was drafted, I was struggling with everybody else to say that name, but now it just rolls off the tongue, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And both of them are probably going to develop into very good NBA players. Jabari Parker probably has a higher ceiling than Giannis does, but a lot of basketball experts are liking what they see in Giannis, and I think that's going to make a huge difference this season. So, you have Larry Sanders, you have Jabari Parker, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you have Jason Kidd on the bench. And that worries me a lot, because Jason Kidd, as said before in the last segment, he did a serviceable job. The team, they didn't crash and burn. They actually did very well in the 2014 half of last season. They were one of the most improved teams over that stretch. And they were able to lobby that into a nice playoff run where they took down the Toronto Raptors before eventually falling to the Miami Heat. But, of course, who wouldn't? They were very good. So he did a serviceable job, but for the most part, in terms of X's and O's, there was not much to be had for Jason Kidd. There was a lot of isolation, a lot of ball stopping, and the fact that he was missing Brook Lopez didn't help either. So now he has a slightly better set of players, more impressionable for the most part. We'll see how Larry Sanders does in the locker room because he made his mistakes, but they were off the court. I hadn't heard anything bad about him before then. So you have a more impressionable group that's willing to learn, especially somebody like Jabari Parker, who's been, for all I've seen, which isn't a lot between his high school years and his time in college, he's been a good teammate. So I'm sure he's willing to listen to Coach Kidd. But it worries me that Jason Kidd is going to be Jabari Parker's first coach. I don't think that's going to stunt Jabari's growth. And I don't think that's going to stunt Larry Sanders' growth as a player. But I'm concerned about everybody else on this roster, especially Giannis Antetokounmpo, because like I said before, a lot of experts are expecting a lot of good things from him, but he still has to develop into those talents. And you need somebody on the roster or on the coaching staff that can help you, realize that potential. And I don't think Jason Kidd is that guy. I actually have to check his coaching staff to see if there's really anybody on that coaching staff that is capable of helping out a young player like Giannis that a lot of people are very high on. But otherwise, I think that it's going to stunt his development with Jason Kidd at the helm, at least for maybe pretty much for the first couple of years. And looking at his assistant coaches, I don't exactly see anybody that screams forward whisperer to me. And I think that that's going to be a problem. Also on defense, I think that's also something that needs to be covered in Kidd's first year in Milwaukee. I mean, you got Larry Sanders back, so you have somebody in the post, so it shouldn't be just a cakewalk. It won't be as easy to score on the Milwaukee Bucks as it was last year, especially in the post. But that leaves everybody else on the roster. Like, how well are they going to play defense? You have a lot of long guys. You got John Henson, you got Jabari, you have Giannis, and you have some some small, quick guys like Brandon Knight and Nate Walters and Kendall Marshall. So you wonder what kind of defense is Jason Kidd going to implement to utilize these players to the best of their ability. I'm sensing it's going to be more of a team defensive scheme. Probably a lot of helping. I hope, with a team like this, you gotta have teammates looking out for each other. So maybe some screen hedging, lots of hedging and recovering. Maybe I feel like that would help the Milwaukee Bucks. But I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking about it now. Like I have the notes in front of me, but I'm still thinking in my head, like, how bad could this go? Or how well could this go? Because as I said before, even though I'm struggled with Jason Kidd's coaching ability, there's still some talented players on the roster, and that could help this team improve in spite of the man that is leading them in the huddle. I mean, Jabari Parker might just be good enough to net this team some wins. He might just have enough wins above replacement to his name this year that he might be valuable. I think Larry Sanders, if he can stay healthy and stay out of trouble, I think he'll be able to net this team some extra wins. I think if Giannis is able to develop off somebody, whoever mentors him, maybe he'll be worth some wins. But otherwise, this team is still going to struggle. And I think that Jason Kidd is going to have a hand in that because he's so busy thinking about advancing without actually doing anything to advance and actually earning it as a coach. There was somewhere I was going and I lost my train of thought here. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. It's a shame. Jason Kidd. He used to be my favorite player too. Especially when I was younger. That time, when that short little time that he was in Phoenix. That was the time that I really, really started to get into basketball. I'd always been a basketball fan. I had had been a fan since I was young enough to remember basketball, which was about 5-6 years old. And that was around the time that Jordan was coming back. And in Omaha, we got Chicago Bulls games, so I happened to watch Michael Jordan and that second three-peat. So I was a Bulls fan. And then with the lockout happening, I guess it was out of my mind, and I went to go play outside or whatever. And then once the NBA came back in full force in 99-2000, the Bulls, I think they were on TV, but I didn't pay attention to them as much because the Suns were on TV more. And I thought Jason Kidd was really cool, despite the blonde hair. So I liked the Phoenix Suns, and when I was 10, I want to say, yes, I was 10, went to see a Suns game with him and Paul McPherson, who scored his career high, and then he was never seen from again. So I was a fan of the Suns there, 1999 to 2001. So, and then when Jason Kidd went to the Nets, I was a fan of him then too. And this was really before I got older, and I started to realize some of the not good things that Jason Kidd had done over the years in terms of off the court. And then he became coach of the Nets. And I thought it was odd that he was selected as the coach. I didn't think it would go well. And it didn't there at the start, so I wasn't wrong. But then eventually he was able to turn the team around. And I started to get on board, even though I was a little weary. And then he pulled that stunt that he did in the offseason where he tried to force his way to more power in Brooklyn. And then when he didn't get his way, he pulled it for Milwaukee, took another man's job just so he could get the power there. Like, this isn't like a Joe Madden situation where, he's actually a proven guy and Ricky Renteria actually, he did what he could, but he'll find another job soon. No, this is the opposite of that. A guy that's unproven, got a big head, pushed a guy out that has a proven track record. So, yeah, I'm off the Jason Kidd bandwagon now. But hopefully his Bucks can succeed, whatever that means for them, in spite of him. What other teams will I talk about? You have to tune in next. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Sims Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just got done talking about the Golden State Warriors, the Brooklyn Nets, the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm just going around the league. I'm looking at the division alignment, or that's how I set up the show. I was looking around, looking at the divisions and the teams in each division, and I was just like, that one looks good. I'll talk about them. That one looks good. Let's talk about them. So the Suns look good. Let's talk about them. The Phoenix Suns, the overachievers of the NBA last season. I read one of the preview articles I read was the 4-part series by 538, and I liked what they said about the Phoenix Suns. They hearkened back to the 1989 Phoenix Suns, which featured a young Jeff Hornacek, who, along with the Suns, were expected, according to 538 calculations, to win 33 games, but instead they were able to push into the NBA playoffs, and they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. So they exceeded expectations. And then Jeff Hornacek, in his first year as head coach of these Phoenix Suns, helps this team defy expectations. This team, the Phoenix Suns, were supposed to be in the lottery last year. And they still were, but they were pushing there at a playoff spot, at a playoff position. And they almost got in too, but the Dallas Mavericks were able to crowd them out. And in the end, they get to start anew here in 2014-2015. Now the question is, are they going to play the underdog role again this year? That's really the question, because they overachieved last year, but now they're here. What does that they mean? Can they the only way that they're going to overachieve again this year is if they get a high seed in the playoffs and challenge the likes of the Spurs and the Clippers and the Warriors. Never thought you'd say they challenged the Clippers in the playoffs, because the Clippers were rarely in the playoffs. But that's the only way that the Suns could actually overachieve this year. And I mean, at the rate they're going, small sample size theater, just a year, I know, that could happen. So I can't exactly laugh at it, but we know that there's probably a low probability there. Now this year, a lot of people are expecting them to compete for that 8th slot. They can see that the Western Conference is a very tough conference. So anybody getting in, it really says something about the conference, or about that team standing in the Western Conference, that they could get into the playoffs at all, because there's probably 11 good teams in the Western Conference that can make the playoffs, but only 8 will survive. So will the Suns be one of them? They have some pieces based off of their game plan. It works for them. That's the thing. Their lineup is a little wonky, but with the game plan that Jeff Hornacek runs, which is fast pace with some outside shooting, and you need some big rebounders down low. You got some forwards to stretch the floor in terms of shooting. The roster that they have works for them perfectly. I mean, you got a guy like Miles Plumlee, and you have Alex Len behind them. I'm really intrigued to see how they develop as centers in the NBA. I think that they could carve a niche for them and work out some serviceable careers, especially Alex Len, who has a lot of size, and Miles Plumlee, who's part of the Plumlee clan that seems to be finally making waves in the NBA. His brother Mason's over in Brooklyn, and we saw some flashes from him. Or he was in Brooklyn. Did he move? I'm going to go ahead and check that here. But Mason has also been making waves in the NBA. I think Miles can do the same. But more importantly, there are the forwards. You got Markieff Morris, who really made a name for himself last year, and he's playing with his brother, which I think is just adorable. And they work well with each other. They're both able to shoot the ball very well, even though they're big guys. And I think that makes a huge difference for the Suns and why they're able to compete so well in the NBA. That the Suns are able to compete so well in the NBA is because the Morrises are able to shoot from different distances. PJ Tucker can do the same, and he's definitely a D-League success story, or just a success story for any player that's, toiling overseas, that is playing in the D-League, or is playing in one of these god-awful minor leagues that are 2 floors under the D League and are playing in like community college gyms and stuff, there's hope for them. And PJ Tucker is an example of that. There's been plenty of them over the years, but PJ Tucker's just another success story, and he's the starting small forward. So he possesses a lot of the abilities of the Morris twins and then Anthony Tolliver, who they added on this year. So there's a lot of good there in the front court. The back court is the part that really intrigued me. I'm still wondering how this is going to work, because the Suns knew that they had to add parts, very important parts. Whoever was available in free agency. And I can see that there wasn't any very tall, really good players available. I mean, Chandler Parsons was on the market, but he went to Dallas instead. Decided to play hero ball yesterday against the Spurs. We saw how that worked out. But you wondered who the Suns would pick up that would fit in to the system that they are trying to develop there. And they got point guard Isaiah Thomas, which is statistically a very good pickup. He had an amazing season in Sacramento. And quite honestly, it was weird for him to even be available in the first place. Last season, he had he averaged 20.3 points a game and 6.3 assists. So you figure that that's the type of ability that the Kings would want, heading into this season. Apparently not, because he was signed away from Sacramento. They did nothing about it. And so now he's with the Suns. So great. They pick up talented point guard Isaiah Thomas and add him to a young, fast, offensive-minded roster. Problem is they already have 2 point guards. Goran Dragic and Eric Bledsoe. Now you would think that they pick up, looking at the season that Isaiah Thomas had in Sacramento, you would think that Isaiah Thomas is the type of pickup that the Suns would make if they chose not to re-sign Eric Bledsoe. And of course, Eric Bledsoe and the Suns had a whole thing about his contract throughout summer camp, that he was a restricted free agent. He was looking to go somewhere else, and the Phoenix Suns wanted to keep him, but not at the price he wanted. So it was a whole stalemate, but eventually they worked that out. So he's here now, and I'm sure he's excited and ready to go, and that's off of his mind. That's in the past. He's going to get his money. So now you have 3 point guards. You got Goran Dragic, you have Eric Bledsoe, and you have Isaiah Thomas. And I was just sitting here when I was studying, last night. I was thinking, what are the Suns going to do with 3 point guards that are highly talented? I'll say that plenty of teams have 3 point guards. So it's not completely unusual to have 3 point guards. But to have 3 point guards of this caliber that on their own could lead a serviceable team if better parts are put around them. To have 3 of them all wearing in the same jerseys, you wonder how much confusion that's going to be for Jeff Hornacek. Now, Jeff Hornacek is a young coach, like pretty much a lot of coaches are in the NBA. He's not the only one. There's a lot of them. I just got done talking about one of them, Jason Kidd. And you saw how I felt about Jason Kidd with him heading into his second year. Jeff Hornacek is doing the same, and I have more faith in Jeff Hornacek than I do in Jason Kidd. Because Jeff Hornacek, he walked in the door, and whatever he said he was going to do, hey, here's our game plan, here's what I want from my team, the team responded well. And while the Nets made a second half comeback in terms of their record, the Suns were playing out of their minds the whole season. They started off very well, and a lot of us, because we've seen lesser teams start off hot and then fall off. So everybody's waiting for the Suns to tail off. Like, oh, that's a good surprise to start the season, but, we'll give it time. We'll wait for them to tail off. And for the most part, they didn't. they didn't make the playoffs, so they couldn't keep up with the pace of the other teams in the West. But for the most part, they overachieved, and they played out of their minds under a first-year head coach. So whatever Jeff Hornacek is teaching them, it's working. And I think that because of that, he's going to be able to work out this 3-point guard rotation. I'm sure that he's been excited, just drawing up all the plans, trying to figure out the best way to utilize 3 talented point guards in Bledsoe, Dragic, and Thomas. Now, according to the depth chart on ESPN.com, you got Gordon starting at point guard because he's the incumbent. He's not going anywhere. You got Bledsoe. He's the one he's going to be playing off ball because he can. He's capable of it. And when you give him the ball, he's going to figure out how to score. So that works too. And then you have Thomas starting behind Dragic. So initially, the way that this looks, before the Suns even play a game, I like this. I'm intrigued by this. And I want to see where it leads to. You'd have to believe that those 3 are going to possibly rotate positions. I'm not as confident in Goran Dragic playing off ball, but I think Isaiah Thomas could probably do some things with that. So I think that it's going to work out in itself, even though it's confusing. But I'm going to be paying attention specifically for that reason, because of the 3-point guards. Because that's something that works in college, works every day in college, B. But to see it implemented at the pro ranks, where you don't have as many gadgety plays and stuff like that doesn't work at the pro level because the players are so good. I want to see this work, and with the staff in place, and as well as the Suns played last year, I think it can work. Now, at the same time, they may very well regress to the mean, and they might have a bad season, go 33-49. That could also happen. I would not be surprised by that. But I'm pretty high on the Suns. I think they'll be 9th or 10th again, because it's tough to get into in the Western Conference playoffs. It's very tough to get in. You got to be on the VIP list. Like, there's a very good chance that the same 8 teams that were in last year are going to get in this year. But I think the Suns are going to do well for themselves. I think fans in the Valley are going to come out of this season pleased. They're going to want more, of course, because it's good. This season is going to be so exciting. But I think they're going to come out pleased and optimistic about the season, because Jeff Hornacek is probably going to figure out what to do with his glut of talent at the point guard position. And hey, I'm excited about Gerald Green because he can really take off. And I'm looking forward to all of those highlights moving forward. So what other teams are intriguing me? You got to stay tuned to find out. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Sims Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. I'm going to be honest with you, for the last 15 seconds, I've been dancing along to the songs, just looking at my Twitter feed. Hey, this music ain't half bad. Not bad at all. UBC on Coliseum tonight, 10 o'clock Eastern. Seattle Emeralds and the Los Angeles Osos. Who are those teams? Tune in at 10 o'clock Eastern to youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet to find out. I'm sure you will be very pleased with the answer. And hey, it's basketball back in Seattle. Maybe not real basketball, but it's a team to cheer for until the Bucks come there. I'm joking. I don't think they're going to be moving anytime soon with their new owners. But they've done some shifty stuff in the past, like hire Jason Kidd. So you never know what's going to happen. Just got done talking. I talked about the Milwaukee Bucks about a couple of segments ago. Just got done talking about the Phoenix Suns. I made this rundown about an hour and change ago. And well, now even more time since I've already gone through an hour of the show. I'm in hour 2 now. Glad that you're joining me here. But I just now realized that I happened to stack the rundown in a very interesting manner. I had 2 segments where I talked about playoff-bound teams that could make a case for the conference championship. That was the Warriors first and the Nets second. Then I had 2 teams that are on the outside looking in the playoff picture in their respective conferences, the Bucks and the Suns. And now I'm heading into the basement. We going to the underground, son. 2 teams that are not good at all. But you can't help but look at the fire, or at the flames rise on the dumpster fire that are these teams. And both of these teams have a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's still a lot of darkness to go through. That first team is the Philadelphia 76ers, who are going out of their way to make sure that they don't have anybody on their roster that you have heard of in pro basketball circles. Like, I think, because as of late, for instance, they just traded off Casper Ware to the Brooklyn Nets for Travis Outlaw and some draft picks. I think that's where they got him from. Or did they send him to New York? They sent him to they got Travis Outlaw. They put Bo Outlaw on the roster on the website, on the Sixers website. And then they subsequently got rid of Travis Outlaw. So they basically just shipped away Casper Ware. I'm thinking that's their trade, because Casper Ware is gone. Travis Outlaw was temporarily in. But either way, it just seems like outside of Jason Richardson, Sam Hinkie is going out on the streets of Philadelphia with headshots of each player saying, do you know who this guy is? And if at least one person of the 100 people that Sam Hinkie polls says yes, they're gone. That's what seems to be the plan here. Seems to be. To an outsider who lives about 1,000 miles away. But as Brett Brown said at the end of last season, this is a 3 to 5 year plan. And you can see certain instances in the game plan where the Sixers are starting to develop something coherent. You see the drafting of Nerlens Noel, and they gave him a year off. They were like, they're going to let him do the surgery, let him heal. So he's here now. And we're going to see what he can do. I hope he stays healthy. That's a huge question. I'm sure that would be a setback if he gets hurt again. Then again, the reason he got hurt wasn't because of any injury issues. He ran into scansion in college. That was only the real thing. So, and it was at the O'Connell Center. The scansions are really close. So he should be fine with the wide open space under the rim. And now they draft Joel Embiid, who, to my understanding, is out for the season as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong at Twitter on Sims Coliseum or on the chat feature on Spreaker.com. I do believe he's out for the year, or at least out for an extended amount of time. So they're giving him time as well. They're being very, very patient. And I'm sure that is wearing on the insanity of some Sixers fans. And it's not like usually, I think with a team like the Celtics, where the fan base is so rabid, that something like this happening, which it probably will for the Celtics, is grating on a fan's mind. It would drive a fan base insane. Not Sixers fans. They have, to my understanding, in Philadelphia, they have resigned to the fact that that the team's going to be bad for several years, and that keeps the casual fans from coming in and buying tickets. But the diehard Sixer fans are like, okay, it's another bad year. Let's see how these guys do. So the expectations even in their own city, even in a fan base, a market as notoriously rabid as Philadelphia, they are going to let this ride. Some of the other things that you see incoherent, that seem coherent in the Sixers plan, they're giving their centers time to heal. They're giving their players time to develop. They are stockpiling draft picks. So there's going to be more. You're going to see that Sixers logo much earlier in the draft as time goes on. And they're trying to pick up all of these young players, as many as possible in the draft. And Brett Brown, their coach, bless his heart that he has to even deal with this, he is implementing a game plan. It's a little higher pace than what Doug Collins had. The original flavored gum of coaching, where he has a lot of flavor and a lot of and players like rally around it for the first couple of years, but eventually it grows stale. So then you got to spit it out. That's what Doug Collins is, it seems, with his coaching career, even though he's a very smart guy. Brett Brown is now in, and it's trying to teach these young players how to play more efficiently and how to play at a faster pace than what they were doing under Doug Collins, under the previous administration. So there's something there. It's just that right now we don't see it. It's like looking at a model house. It's a spectacular model. It looks great, and it has the coming soon sign on it. But for a lot of people, that might not be fast enough. For people with even shorter attention spans than mine, people who are not as patient, this just seems like they are cratering as much as possible. And I gotta admit, it does kind of look like that to me. Like, I understand there's a plan that they are looking to develop young players and bring in young players, and they're looking to get more young players. But come on. Like, people have not heard of anybody on this roster. Like, okay, it's not fair to me because I've heard of a lot of these guys at the college ranks and in passing. But I'm going to wager you that if you have at least a passing knowledge of different levels of basketball, you have probably heard more of the players that played for their D-League affiliate, the Delaware Sevens, than you did of the Philadelphia 76ers that are on the roster now. Like I said before, it's about even with me. I probably have more knowledge of the 76ers since they're the pro team. But I'm sure that if I name some people, you're probably going to be like, oh, hey, I remember him. Akil Carr is somebody that comes to mind. So if you live in Baltimore and you're a fan and you have gone to high school in Baltimore and you follow the news where they talk about preps in Baltimore, you've heard of Akil Carr, the Crime Stopper. Cleveland Melvin. No, not Cleveland Melvin. Somebody else from college who left college and came to play. I think it was Cleveland Melvin. He was there for a little while, and I've heard of him because he was here in Chicago playing for DePaul, and he was let go. You got Norvell Pell, who was a high school phenom, and he was supposed to be going to different colleges. He didn't go. Thanasis Antetokounmpo, Giannis's brother, he's developing. Tiny Gallon from Oklahoma, he broke a rim in Spokane once. And Rodney Williams, who has a lot of height, or a lot of leap, so he should be dunking a lot. And then Josh Okoye, who's had some run in the NBA. Those are guys that if you say their names, you probably have heard of them before, more so than the 76ers that are on the roster. Maybe if you say Josh Okoye, people might not know what you're talking about because his name is spelled differently, Okognen. So just say Josh Okognen. You'll probably get more people to say that. Go out on the street like Sam Hinkie probably did and poll 100 people. I'm sure that you'll get better results. But inside of the front office, I'm sure that all of this makes all the sense in the world. I'm sure that if you talk to Brett Brown, he's probably going home every night and he is just fine with this, and he is willing to, develop these guys and teach these guys the best that he can to the best of his abilities. And the players out there with, one, the low expectations, And then 2, the people like me that are piling on them all the time, they're probably motivated by that. The low bar, they're like, it's less pressure. They're like, I can make mistakes, I can develop, and my coach believes in me. Or, got all these haters, and I'm going to show them. They're going to show me. In an individual sense. Because this team is not going anywhere. They're probably going to be last. And they probably don't mind being last. Because that gets them a better chance at a lottery pick. And as you know, the NBA was thinking of passing some anti-tanking legislation, and it did not get the number of votes it needed to pass. So the 76ers are home free for now. So since they aren't going to be good, but the NBA players are going to be looking to develop themselves on an individual level, who should you be looking out for? Well, first and foremost, Nerlens Noel, of course. You have to wonder how he's going to be coming off of the injury. As I said before, it's not that he had injury problems so much as he had a unfortunate injury that he had to recover from. Because I remember that game, and I felt bad for him against Florida when he ran into the basket with his knee. That has to suck. And especially with what happened to Paul George, I think they need to change that at the O'Connell Center. Not that I think they can. The seats are so on top of each other. Michael Carter-Williams, he's also somebody to look at. He blossomed last year for sure because there wasn't a lot of expectations for him. I mean, we had the same expectations for the Sixers last year that we do this year, which is that they were going to be bad. So a lot of people had questions about what Michael Carter-Williams could bring to the point guard position. But he did very well for himself last year, and I think he's going to build off of that development this year. He's a 6'6" point guard. That's going to mean a lot in terms of how other point guards defend him and how he defends point guards. He has a huge advantage, and the fact that he's 6'6", but is capable of still running the point, that is a dangerous weapon for the 76ers to have, and I'm sure that he's one of the building blocks that they're going to keep, because a lot of these guys aren't going to be here for long outside of a couple that I mentioned, like Joel Embiid, Nerlens, and then Michael himself. They're keeping those guys, and I think that Michael Carter-Williams is going to be an important asset for this team. Now, Michael Carter-Williams is probably going to he's out, of course, with his shoulder, but he's going to be back after a while, and when he does, I think he's going to look very good for his team. Luke Richard Mbamute, or Luke Mbamute, because on the Philadelphia roster page, I don't know, they felt like they couldn't pay for the whole name. I want to see what he can do, him and Alexis Shved, because they were just added on, and they've been around for a while, so why not see what they can do? Jason Richardson is the only old guy, I say that with air quotes, on the roster. I wonder how much height he has left. Can he really throw it down like he used to? Of course, I didn't watch any Philadelphia games last year, so I'm not sure what he can bring to the table. But I think that'll be intriguing enough. So Philadelphia, they're going to be bad, but they have some players to keep an eye on whenever those guys get healthy. Sam Hinkie, he might be out of his mind, or at the same time, he might be the smartest guy in the room. Who's the other team that's really bad and may have something intriguing about them? I think you can think of it, but stick around and you'll find out. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Sims Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Got done talking about the 76ers, who are by and large going to be the worst team in the NBA's Eastern Conference. And in the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Lakers are not too far behind, only made worse by the injury of their young power forward, Julius Randle. The Lakers are the only team that I'm going to be talking about specifically today that actually played last night. They lost, as I expected, to the Houston Rockets, 108-90. I was actually optimistic because I didn't want to make a prediction. I don't know why I was hesitant to make a prediction. Got to be certain about stuff if I want to last in this game. I said that they were going to lose by more than 10 points, and I covered. They lost by 18, even though it could have very well been more. They made a run there in the third quarter where they got it down to single digits, and I think that helped somewhat in terms of keeping the game relatively close, because they could have lost by much more, especially to a team like the Houston Rockets. Let's talk about some of the stats here in this game. For the Lakers, Kobe Bryant led all scorers, with 19. Carlos Boozer did what he came to do. That was score a lot and rebound a lot. He finished with 17 and 7. Jordan Hill, who has always been a scrappy player up in the post, he ended up with 10 rebounds and 7 points. And it was a pretty fairly even distribution between offensive and defensive rebounds. 4 on the offensive boards, 6 on the defensive boards. And then off the bench, you got Ed Davis, who is very good. I think he's a very good bench player. He ended up with 11 points off of the bench. So he's going to step up in the absence of Julius Randle, who went down with a injury, which we should be hearing more about soon. I'm not sure if it's out now on the timeline, but I'll check during the next break. But we should be hearing something from the Lakers about how long he's going to be out. They said it was a broken leg or something with his tibia. So we'll find out what happens there. Really unfortunate injury. He finished with 2 points, by the way, 2 points, 1 turnover in 14 minutes. I heard that it could not, his career as a whole probably isn't going to end well for him in terms of his prospects. A lot of people were high on Julius Randle coming out of Kentucky because of some of the athletic ability that he possessed, but he's a raw talent. But that's why you had a veteran in Carlos Boozer come in so he could at least mentor him and groom him into something. But that's at least going to be halted for now, as he's going to look to recover from this injury, maybe for the rest of the season, maybe for just most of the season. We'll find out soon enough. But I with the expectations varying so much between serviceable NBA player and draft bust, I was hoping for him to have a good rookie season, to develop into something good. Not so much. I couldn't base it necessarily off of anything really, except that he just seemed like a nice guy. A lot of these players seem like cool guys. We're at a point in the NBA where there's not as much off the court craziness as there has been in the past, or as you would expect in professional sports leagues with so many players at once. So a lot of guys in the league seem like nice guys, and Julius Randle seemed like one of them. So hopefully it's a speedy recovery just for his sake. For his team's sake, they were going to be god-awful regardless. Interesting enough, though, Julius Randle, or Carlos Boozer, rather, was coming in. It was almost like a pseudo trade between Pau Gasol and Carlos Boozer, between Chicago and the Lakers. So coming in, and I hope the phone's going off in the background, and I'm trying to power through it, but my apologies if that's picking up on air here. It was a pseudo trade between the Lakers and the Bulls, with Carlos Boozer being amnestied in Chicago and coming to the Lakers, while Pau Gasol ended up signing by choice with the Bulls. So he's here now, and he's the one going to be looked at to mentor Julius Randle whenever he does come back, and maybe some of the, like Ed Davis, some of the other young power forwards. I said yesterday, that troubles me, because Carlos Boozer, for all of his scoring and rebounding ability, man, he was a stressful person. He was inconsistent. He didn't play defense. And those are two things that bothered a lot of Bulls fans, that while he can score and rebound a lot, and he can get this team while he got the Bulls through some of the games without Derrick Rose, that is not someone that you want to rely on as a key player. And that's exactly what the LA Lakers are doing because, quite honestly, Carlos Boozer, now with the injury of Steve Nash, is probably the second best player on the team. Like, even in Chicago, with the issues, with Derrick Rose's injury, Carlos Boozer was not the second best player on the team. I think that was Jimmy Butler. He played his heart out, and he was all over the floor all the time. And then the first best player was Joakim Noah. Now he's the number 2 man. And he doesn't play defense up front. He's just going to score and rebound and get his numbers up. And then you have a guy like Kobe, who's going to look to shoot a lot. And that's going to be problematic for the Los Angeles offense. So having a guy like Boozer develop Julius Randle, I'm hoping that Julius, whenever he gets well, is hopefully like, okay, I'm learning from you not to do what you're doing. But we'll find out. We'll see how it plays out between Randle's injury and Boozer's mentorship. The big question here is Kobe killing his team? That's been the question ever since ESPN brought it up, really. And not so much ESPN, the big, huge, evil machine, but it's just so much as the NBA experts at ESPN are questioning Kobe's ability to help his team more than hurting it. Because a lot of people look at Kobe or mostly detractors, look at him as a selfish player, a player that looks out for his. I suppose you could say that he is looking out for his. He's going to get his shots, but I think he's doing it because he wants to help his team. He's a guy that can make players better. But he returns. Of course, he only played a few games last year before suffering that injury. He now comes in to a very rough situation. Like, granted, he can make players better. He can make players better at times when he is not looking for just his shot. But this is going to be a harder task for him. This is a harder crop of players to make better. So I think that the cards are kind of stacked against him in that aspect. The quick analysis would be to assume that this is going to be 2006 all over again. But I think it's going to be worse than that. I think that this is going to be a level of Lakers fail of the likes of which we have never seen before. I think that this team, now with the loss of Julius Randle and some of that depth up front, with an older Kobe that can still score, but there's only so much that he can do on his own at his old age. A man up front in Carlos Boozer that can score but doesn't play defense. He can grab some boards, but he can't play defense. So otherwise, there's not much scoring up front. There's not much scoring anywhere. You got injuries already. Julius Randle, Nick Young, Steve Nash is out for the season. That's going to be a problem for these Lakers to get through this season. And like I said, this is a team that has historically been good. Like the Celtics had their huge down period in the 90s with the loss of the Larry Bird and Kevin McHale in the 80s dynasty. So they had their down years. They have gone through this sort of thing for an extended stretch of time, and now they're back at that after a quick rise in the late 2000s. But the Lakers rarely have gone through this. They have never had back-to-back seasons in which they were under 500. That's going to be a first here in Los Angeles. One thing that 538 also pointed out was the fact that they have not had such little production from future Hall of Famers ever in NBA history. They had 0.8 wins above replacement from future Hall of Famers because Kobe Bryant went down and Steve Nash also eventually went down last season. And and Pau Gasol was the only guy left, but he didn't have the best year either. And he had, I think he had a couple of injuries himself too. So that came out to 0.8 wins above replacement from future Hall of Famers, or, Hall of Fame bound players, fewest in Laker history since 94-95, when they did not have any Hall of Fame players at all. They were led by Nick Van Exel at the time, who for his talent, he's probably not going to be in Springfield anytime soon. I thought that was interesting, and I think that will get a bit of a boost. It's going to be low production from future Hall of Famers because there's only one now, with Steve Nash going down and Pau Gasol gone. Kobe is going to try to do what he can. He's not going to pout. That's one thing. That's one thing that's really going to help the Lakers here not go 9-73. That while Kobe may be detrimental in terms of what he's doing to the team, and he's going to look awful in advanced statistics in terms of teamwork and synergy and sharing the ball, I think that just off of his own determination and his hard work, the Lakers are going to be capable of not going 79-73. That's my bold prediction. They are going to win double-digit games because of Kobe. I think that he is not going to be coming to the Lakers practice facility. He's not going to be coming to El Segundo every day pouting and upset. I think he's going to look to mentor to these players. He learned from this, and I think he learned from this in 2006. He's a 40-year-old man. They're pushing 40, if not 40. And he learned from that experience in 2006. And I think that he's going to want to mentor more to these players. He understands that he's in for a long, bumpy ride, but he has too much pride to just sit here and punt on the season. And I think because of that, he's going to be the leading scorer by far. Carlos Boozer shortly behind him, and then a huge drop-off there. And this team is going to win more than the 9 games that they would win, the 9 games or less that they would win if Kobe was injured for some reason. So those are my teams, my 6 teams that I found intriguing: the Warriors, the Nets, the Suns, the Bucks, the 76ers, and these Lakers. It's going to be a rough season for those 2 teams at the bottom, the Sixers and Lakers, but alas, that's why we play the game, that's why we play these games, because anything could happen over the next handful of months. It's going to be a fun basketball season, people. Who's going to come out with awards in the end? That's what we're going to find out next. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Bottom of the hour here on the Coliseum Sports Network. It's the Raymond Sims Show, NBA Preview Edition. If you're looking for me to talk about all kinds of different sports, don't worry. I'll be talking about plenty of that stuff tomorrow and moving forward, weekdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on the Coliseum Sports Network. If you missed anything that I talked about, just got done talking about 6 teams that intrigued me a lot this season outside of the Cavaliers and the Bulls and the Spurs and all the usual suspects, and the Clippers. They're interesting too. Don't worry, because this broadcast will shortly be archived and on YouTube on the Coliseum Sportsnet YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet. You go over there and you can, replay this, or you can replay it here on Spreaker.com. On either page, you are more than capable of moving up and down the line to the different segments, and it's all good, man. If you miss anything, you didn't miss anything. That's how it goes, pretty much. So, I'm excited about this season. I'm always excited about the NBA season, but I think over the years, the recent years, it's only gotten better. Starting with that lockout year, I think coming out of that lockout where the season started on Christmas. From there, the NBA has just been hitting the ground running. It's become a more exciting game. I know there's a lot of people that left and were tired of it after the Jordan era, after the second Jordan era, and they haven't watched since. Come on back. The water's fine. I think this year is going to be very good as well. Last year kind of petered out a little bit due to a lot of injuries, and there's a lot of injuries this year. But I think still, because it's going to be so competitive and because there's just so many good competitive teams, I think that will make up for it this season, and it should be a very fun one. I'm excited. I'm stoked. So, who are going to be the award winners coming out of the 2014-2015 season? Now, I decided to look at the MVP award, the Rookie of the Year, the Sixth Man, the Defensive Player of the Year, the Coach of the Year, the Eastern Conference Champion, the Western Conference Champion, and the NBA Finals Champion. Now, I was thinking of doing the Most Improved Player of the Year award as well, but that's a bit too much. It's hard to tell. I know a lot of people are very high on Giannis Antetokounmpo as the most improved player, but he's such a wild card. And I think Jason Kidd is going to be very problematic in terms of his development because of like the sets and stuff that Jason Kidd will probably be running if he does it all. Like he might just be leaving this to a more isolation, freelancing style of ball, which I think these young players are not capable of. So that's a problem. That's a real problem. And I think that it's up in the air, and it's hard to call the most improved player. I guess Reggie Jackson could probably be somebody that could get that award if he continues to perform well against opponents. He's probably going to be needed a lot this season, especially in the beginning here with Kevin Durant going down for an extended amount of time. But you hope that with as much of an athletic specimen as Kevin Durant is, hopefully he'll be back very, very soon. Other than that, though, I just decided to steer away from the most improved player. We'll just find out who it is at the end of the year. My MVP, I think just bringing up who the champion is probably better for tension in terms of following this segment. So I'll just get the MVP out of the way first. It's going to be LeBron James. I mean, come on, it's going to be him. Maybe Derrick Rose with his return. If the Bulls get to first place again, like he was able to lead them to several years ago, maybe Derrick Rose. But otherwise, I'm thinking it's going to be LeBron. It just is. He's a very valuable player to his team. He comes back home, and he's probably going to be statistically dominant. He's going to look very good, helping the Cavaliers to first or second place in the East. So I think he's probably going to have a strong case for the MVP. I understand a lot of people probably have LeBron fatigue in terms of who the people who can vote for the MVP. But at the same time, you just got to give credit where it's due. So I'm just going to let LeBron be the MVP. I had to do something about this phone. I'm going to do something about it tomorrow. So be sure to tune in. It'll be phone free. It'll be great. So let's move to something a little more climactic. The Rookie of the Year award. I think that Jabari Parker is probably going to win Rookie of the Year, in spite of Jason Kidd. I think left to there, and here's the difference between why I don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo will win Most Improved Player and why I think Jabari Parker will win Rookie of the Year, in spite of the man who is leading them, supposedly. I think left to their own devices, I think Jabari Parker is much more capable of figuring out things for himself as opposed to what Giannis can do and how much more he has to develop as an all-around player. And Jabari Parker has a lot of talent and ability that I think is definitely going to show through as he goes through this season, as he'll be kind of the guy in Milwaukee. I think with Andrew Wiggins, he's going to be there with some help in Minnesota, so he won't have to do as much, and that might be lost on some of the voters about who's going to be Rookie of the Year, because Jabari Parker may have to do more with less if Milwaukee is going to compete for a final spot in the Eastern Conference. So that's why I think Jabari Parker will win. I think Jabari and Andrew, it's really a boat race between them for Rookie of the Year, but I'm going to give it to Parker over Wiggins. A lot of the other players in the league that are rookies this year, there's a lot more question marks about them. They're going to have just big, huge seasons if they think that they're going to win the hardware for Rookie of the Year and to just be serviceable players to their team. Heck, there's one on Minnesota's roster in Zach LaVine, who is a high draft pick, but could become the next Joe Alexander, as I saw in one of the articles that I had read, that there's a good chance that he could just be a workout warrior like Joe was and not really contribute to his team. To the next award, the Sixth Man of the Year. Now, it's going to go to somebody that almost wasn't going to be a sixth man, and that's Taj Gibson, who, coming out of last season and understanding that Derrick Rose was returning and not knowing who the Bulls were going to sign in the offseason, like when there was Carmelo talk, for instance, it was known that Taj Gibson was not on the table. If Carmelo Anthony was to say, okay, fine, and sign with the team anyways, knowing that Taj wasn't on the table for the Knicks, in a sign and trade, and the Knicks just for some reason were like, sure, why not? Then Taj Gibson would have been your starting power forward for the 2015 Chicago Bulls. Instead, that kind of kept the Knicks away from a sign and trade, which didn't give the Bulls enough money to sign Carmelo, which led to Carmelo signing back with New York. We'll see how well that goes. But because of that, the Bulls had money to sign Pau Gasol instead, which pushes Taj Gibson, or keeps Taj Gibson, in the six-man role, where he was behind Carlos Boozer, who was a better scorer than him for the most part. So Boozer would always get the start. Taj would be on the bench because it worked so well for the Bulls. So Taj, still in that role. We'll see how he feels about that. I'm sure he's a team player, so maybe he's not as upset as a lot of people think that he might be. But I think he will get the hardware for his troubles because I think he is a capable starter. He's probably your fourth option for scoring, or your fifth one, perhaps. You shouldn't be looking to him in the top three. But he can get the job done on the boards and scoring inside. So I think that he will bring that ability in small amounts, assuming health for all of the Bulls. I think that he will bring that starting ability in small doses, and it's going to look so good that he'll be able to walk away with the six-man award. Then you got the Coach of the Year. This one was difficult because I wanted to pick a coach that makes a huge difference for his team. Not just a really good coach, because there's a lot of those in the NBA, to be quite honest. You got Greg Popovich, of course. You got Tom Thibodeau. You have Eric Spoelstra, who is going to have to prove that he's an actual good coach. I think that if he makes the Heat a very competitive team, he could be in the running for Coach of the Year. When I was looking at the experts make their predictions, they were thinking some of them were thinking Steve Clifford in Charlotte. I think that there's a good case for him. But in the end, I'm going to go with Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta. I like his Spurs-light sort of game plan. He's getting Al Horford back, thank goodness, because I don't know what they were going to do with Pero Antic up front. I don't know how much longer they could take of him. And now he's going to be coming off the bench in small doses, so maybe that'll help him moving forward. But Al Horford is back, and they still have that quick ball movement, outside shooting type of a game plan. And they got Millsap and Horford up front. I think that if Budenholzer can successfully rein that in for his team, that will propel Atlanta to better than average, which they have been for years. Probably just they're the Mendoza line of the NBA Eastern Conference. They've just been average for years. They make the playoffs. They don't go far. I think that they can go far if everything goes right for this team. And I think that could earn him, especially with all the Spurs love, that could earn him Coach of the Year. So that's my pick. I might be way wrong. You never know. Doc Rivers is also a very good coach, but I don't know if they're necessarily going to just acquiesce the award to him. So, like I said, I'm not picking most improved. But in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to be a homer here and say that the Bulls are the ones that are going to come away with the Eastern Championship while Cleveland figures itself out. The Bulls pretty much, in my opinion, have a 1-year window to get out of the East. Because once Cleveland figures it out, that's it. That's game for the next 3 to 4 years, in my opinion. So I think the Bulls will come out with it this year. The Warriors look so good. But I learned over the past 2 years not to pick against the Spurs. So I'm going to pick the Spurs to come out of the West. And I'm also picking the Spurs to win the championship. Not even necessarily based off of any research that I've done, but just because you don't go against the Spurs. And I'd rather be wrong about the Spurs than wrong about somebody else. So there's a look at my NBA preview. I'll have much more after this. It's the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Sims Show, NBA Preview Edition here on the Coliseum Sports Network, streaming live at Spreaker.com. In the home stretch here, you can still chat with me on the Spreaker chat feature. You can at me on Twitter, @MeDo, at Sims Coliseum. Also, feel free to join me on other social media platforms such as Tumblr, Facebook. Both of those are still Sims Coliseum. So I tried to streamline the names just to make sure that I didn't, it's not hard to find me. But of course, on YouTube, that's kind of the bread and butter. You can find the Coliseum Sports Network itself. YouTube.com/user/Coliseum Sports Network. Got a game tonight, UBC Wednesday, Seattle at Los Angeles from Anaheim. Be sure to check that out at 10 Eastern. That should be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that first broadcast on Monday, first game of the season for the United Basketball Clubs between Chicago and Newark. Low scoring, but it was back and forth until the very end. So just come in, join, and enjoy more of that action. Little late night flavor for those of you on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, you'll probably just be getting home, and you can tune in and check that game out as well. Just got done talking about the NBA and all the wonderful things about it. 6 teams that intrigued me and who's walking away with hardware at the end of the season. Had a lot of fun doing that, reading up. I'm not even done reading up on stuff. There's still more to learn. There's so much more knowledge to soak up about the NBA, and I'll hopefully be passing the savings along to you throughout the season. So I thank you for enjoying that. You can catch that in the archive here on Spreaker or over at the Coliseum Sports Network. I'm going to try to remember to, on the YouTube archive, annotate some of the times in the description so that you can just skip along to whatever you would like, because I've been doing that lately. But if you aren't a fan of the NBA, and I don't know why you aren't, you can be sure to catch me every day from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. That's 10 to noon here in Chicago, where I am, and then that's 8 to 10 on the West Coast. You can catch me weekdays. I'll be talking about a lot of different sports. Thank goodness that the World Series went to a 7th game, because I didn't want to talk about it. If the Giants had clinched yesterday, I would have been in an awkward spot where tomorrow I would have had to talk about the World Series in general. So now I have time to talk. I'll be able to recap Game 7 tomorrow, so it all works out. Also, bringing up the college football playoff tomorrow. It's very interesting that it's not too interesting, but it is somewhat interesting that the first rankings for the college football playoff show 3 SEC teams. But I mean, come on, those 3 teams earned it. The SEC has been playing their butt off. I mean, sometimes you wonder if the SEC is overrated as a conference, or if it's top heavy. Maybe there's a case for it, but the teams that are in the playoff, they deserve to be in there. So, the 2 undefeated teams, Florida State, the only non-SEC team. You got the 2 undefeated teams, and you got 2 very worthy teams in there as well. So it all works out for itself, but it's still very fluid, as college football tends to be. So no surprises there. Also, since I enjoyed the NBA preview so much today, be sure to look out for a college basketball preview. That'll be coming soon, probably in a couple of weeks. The NCAA Division I basketball season officially kicks off on November 14th, on that Friday. So I'll probably do maybe that Friday show or that Thursday show will probably be a college basketball preview. I'm already on it. I'm already hitting those books to go over each of the college basketball teams. I'm not going to be talking about the America East or the Big Sky. So any Sacramento State fans, I'm sorry in advance that I'm not going to be talking about your team, but pretty much anybody that's going to be making any noise in the tournament. Major conference teams, the mid-majors, those are always important. Can't sleep on them. Teams like that, I'll be sure to cover in the college basketball preview show, which should be coming out in a couple of weeks. So be sure to check that out. Speaking of previews, if you are an NBA fan, I'll come back around here. If you are an NBA fan, be sure to check out this League Pass preview. The NBA League Pass preview is in effect it started yesterday and is going to be through November 4th. And you get to see what League Pass has to offer, and seeing out of market games legally is fun. It feels good. Now, I've been kind of spoiled by MLB.tv because they have a feature where you can listen to the different audio calls between the TV and the radio side, both home and away. Like, I'm spoiled by that. I kind of wish that they did that with the NBA, but they haven't. I still haven't taken advantage. Tonight or later on, pretty much tonight, I got to go ahead and check out last night's games, and I wanted to hurry up and do it before tonight's games start, but the way that I had my afternoon is set up, funny Kevin Hart reference, unintentionally, the way that my afternoon is set up, I got to work on my UBC stuff so I can prepare for the game tonight. and that probably will be a little time consuming. So I'm probably not going to be able to check that out yet. But I did test out on my free trial. I was able to test out the League Pass player, and I went ahead and checked and saw like the first seconds of Orlando and New Orleans. And let me just say, that Fox box looks very prettyful on the Fox Sports broadcast. You know, the video that they used for the Orlando-New Orleans games was from Fox Sports New Orleans, the one that they set up just for the Pelicans. I think they set it up for the Hornets, and then now they're the Pelicans. So I know that Fox has been doing a graphic overhaul since the beginning of the college football season. Yeah, since the beginning of the college football season. Then they carried it over to the NFL, and now that the NBA is starting, they've carried it over as well. I love this, and I hope that it doesn't go away. But seeing Fox's MO, they always update their graphics every 2 or 3 years. Heck, I like their graphics that Fox had in the that Fox Sports Net had in the mid 2000s, where it was a black bar top along the top of the screen, and then the pods that had like the team initials in them were color coded for the team. I missed that. That was fun. And then it had the graphical sounds. I should have got the sound effect and uploaded it to my console. But I used to love that sound, the little updated sound. And then like I'm a fan of Fox's graphics. Their broadcasts themselves are hit and miss, but I really enjoy their graphics. And I think this year, with just the complete overhaul, I guess, for this 2014-2015 season, they just look absolutely gorgeous. So I'm looking forward to more Fox Sports games. It almost makes me wish that Chicago's sports teams were still on FSN Chicago, just to see that box in use. But that's not going to happen. We are now 10 years into the Comcast Sportsnet Chicago era, so we're pretty deep in there, and Comcast does a very good job of covering the sports teams. So there's no inherent reason why they would move back over to Fox. I think they're doing just fine. It's also very interesting that Fox seems to have been shut out from a lot of the sporting rights that have been on the market. Like the NBA was the last one for a while. I think like the Big Ten rights or one of the college conferences, those are going to be up in the air soon. But for the most part, all of the major TV rights like baseball and stuff have been taken. They've been off the table. So it's very weird that Fox has been shut out. It makes you wonder what the future is going to be for them. But I don't care. As long as they keep making beautiful graphics, I'll be like, ooh, pretty. And I'll just watch all the same. It doesn't matter to me. But, I'm just happy with that all of these sports channels exist. Because I love to binge on sports. I know a lot of people like live events. And I'm cool with that. But if you just leave it on demand for me to go watch at my leisure, because I do stuff when I feel like it. I'm trying to change that, but I'm a guy that I got to do stuff in my leisure. Just leave it on demand. Go ahead, air the game, do the live broadcast. Just leave it in the on demand section. I'll check it out when I need to. As long as you do that, I'm good, because I like watching my sports shows in bulk, kind of like with Netflix, except sports events are longer, so it's harder to do. I hope you've enjoyed the show. This has been the Raymond Sims Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, 1.